All right, and I think we are online.
All right, welcome to the 26th meeting of the Junto Club. We're inspired by Benjamin Franklin, who in 1727 started his Junto Club to bring his friends and cohorts together to talk about business, politics, science, society in general, try to improve each other, learn from each other. And we kind of do a similar thing. So we come here with topics to discuss, try to learn them a little bit more, debate them a little bit, shoot the shit, all that stuff. That is the Junto Club. There's three of us,
The modern version.
modern version. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the future of transportation in a little while. But first things first, Shu always brings a quote from Benjamin Franklin that we try to interpret.
All right. So today's quote is, quote, the busy man has a few idle visitors. To the boiling pot, the flies come not, end quote. Kind of difficult to. Does it make sense? Let me repeat. The busy man has few idle visitors, semicolon. To the boiling pot, the flies come not. All right. I think that was a better narration there. Sounds good.
I think this is an easy one this week, right? Like the first
Okay.
sentence, there's not much interpretation. It's kind of just a statement. If you're busy, you're not going to have people casually visit, and then it's an analogy with a fly.
Okay. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with that, but I guess is it specifically saying like flies are annoyances? So it's like if you stay busy and involved in your own stuff, then you're not gonna have like annoying people bothering you.
That could be the implication that idle visitors. I was thinking of them as a positive thing, like, oh, someone just comes by to hang out and chat or something. But, maybe Benjamin Franklin didn't see it like that.
No.
Yeah. And I think when I first look at it, I was thinking along the same line as Matt, your view. And then I read it a little bit more, and the busy man. I was like, oh, is he trying to say busy man? Is he trying to say being busy is good or bad, right? So like hardworking, something like that. Is it related like, and it has few idle visitors? Like idle kind of mean like your visitors have nothing else to do, right? Kind of thing. And then as Mike pointed out, the second part, the boiling pot, and then the flies is like something very annoying, like kind of negative, right? So I think he's praising being hardworking, and that way you have like few like idle visitors. Like idle visitors, just like people have nothing else to do and they just come by and just annoying you kind of in a way, I guess. Yeah.
No, I guess that's the way I saw it. But I'm sorry, I'm distracted. My hair is a mess, and my vanity is driving me crazy.
Yes, our many listeners also want to watch for our excellent hair. That is the thing, got to keep it maintained.
So.
Yeah. Nice. So yeah, what's the quote on vanity we talked about before? I forgot.
Whatever it is, it didn't resonate enough with me. So.
All right. So I think even in his I think he's praising like being busy, like being hardworking back in the day. I think nowadays, like being busy, sometimes you might burn out and stuff like that, right? It's getting too extreme. But back in the day, I think he's praising being busy. It was a good thing back in the day because in his autobiography, he also mentioned that it's good like to go around. He actually intentionally like to go around like to show people that he's working hard. He said that way you will get your reputations up, right? Because he was a printer before, so he's like, oh, you need to keep you busy all the time, going around, make sure people see that you're being busy too, like hardworking. So to increase your reputation in the community, and then people will bring you business as well. Now you're an honest, hardworking person, stuff like that. So anyway, he did mention that in his also biography. So
he's like the Instagram, influencers who have to go around showing that they're successful to get their reputation up. He was ahead of the curve.
He was many things.
You actually brought up, I think one of our early quotes was about that. Like it was something to the effect of, showing that you're busy, right?
I see. Okay.
Oh,
That's
but
good.
it's true. I mean, well, it's like the modern day, like 90% of like getting ahead is just like showing up, like making your presence known. So
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of a quote from Warren Buffett, though. He did ask, like, do you want to be known as the best lover in the world, but being a very bad but being the worst lover? But would you want to be known as the worst lover, but being the best lover in actuality, right? Does that make sense?
I see. So so if you had, so like, would you want to be, would you take people thinking you're a good lover if you were a bad lover, or vice versa? Which would you pick?
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Which would you pick, Shu, if you're going to bring it up?
Well, I guess I think the whole point to be in the second, right? Even though as long as you are true to yourself, being the best lover, even though it doesn't matter how other people perceive you, right? So hopefully, I don't know. Ideally I would choose that one, but I don't know. Vanity is sometimes you do something is a lot of time the motivation is to look good, right? So, but hopefully, in ideal case, I would choose the second part.
Well, is it a prisoner's dilemma question? Like, I mean, because if it's a one-off, then I think maybe you can take the second one. But I feel like if it's if you have a good reputation about anything, you're going to get opportunities to I guess get better. I mean, right? So
use the first to leverage practice.
Yeah, I mean, right? So I guess if you never get the opportunity, it's not gonna what's the point? But if you're going to get many opportunities because of how you present yourself, then ideally you could get better, right? So
that's true. Practice makes perfect.
That's right. So this is.
I see. You are thinking in terms of like just dating once. Like if you are known as the best lover, you attract a lot of women, and then you can improve.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean,
even though you are the worst lover.
Dating is one example, but I feel like that goes for anything, right? Like if you're a good interviewer and like even if you show up to your first 3 jobs and they're like, oh, actually you're pretty shitty, like so you don't like keep the jobs for long, but every time you're learning and getting better. So I would say that route has like you would need to have a thick skin, right? Because you need to like be willing to disappoint a lot of people, but but I think there is the opportunity to learn. Whereas in the second case, it's like you're never really like, you're not like the point of, or like the usefulness of having the skill, I think is sort of lost at that point, right? Because it's like people won't give you the chance. And I think perception is a big thing.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I just want to say, and to last point is that I think you're thinking about too hard on that one. I guess my point is that I think Warren Buffett would disagree with us. I don't think that was his point. So yeah. Wow. But anyway, so let's move on to what happened to, this is in Mike's alley. Now, what happened to the Stanley Cup? Have you guys heard about what happened to the Stanley Cup?
Oh, it got dented.
Yeah. Did you? Okay. Can you explain what happened?
I mean, I just read the headline that it got dented. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup over Montreal in 5 games. And Tampa Bay, this was their second consecutive Stanley Cup. Apparently they partied really hard, and I don't know how, but the Stanley Cup got dented. And it's like a big thing because like, it's not like there's like a separate trophy in hockey. It's like they present like the Stanley Cup to like a team each year. So
yeah, so that's really strange to me, because I thought that everybody win a Stanley Cup like each year. No, I realized that actually some people actually when they win it, and when they want it, some people actually sleep with it, take video with it, go boating, party with it, and then I was like just passing it around, right? So that's kind of strange to me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's a big thing. Like they take it back to their hometowns and all kinds of it's very tradition,
Yeah.
heavy,
okay.
so.
I mean, if you do that, it's not surprised, something is gonna happen to you, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's just metal? You said it dented, right? Can't they just
Mhm.
like knock that back out with a hammer? You know, in a professional.
I'm sure there's some way they can restore it, but I don't know. I mean, it was I guess it's just like, because I mean, back a lot of people, like a lot of society will just like object to, like when the Bruins won the Stanley Cup, I can remember they ran up a bar tab of like $500,000 or something. And then it was like, and people were like, oh, that's terrible because, I mean, it's just sort of a waste of money. And like, why would you need to do that? And it's a game and whatever. But it's like, hey, I mean, yeah, I mean, just professional athletics in general is like, it's sort of just one of the things in society that's like, it's ridiculous. Like on one hand, it's like it makes tons of money. So what are you gonna do? And obviously, if they're generating that much money, they should see a like piece of that. And two, it's sort of like plenty of people, act stupid and get altered on substances just cheaply. So it's like,
So it's only hockey, right? Well, NFL they have like new trophy for every like championship, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean it's hockey is different in that way.
They're
Lord
frugal.
Stanley's Cup. Yeah.
It's smart. They're like, we don't have to make a trophy every year.
Is that the rationale originally, just to save money?
Probably not.
No, I imagine it's just. I mean, hockey is older than. I mean, basically, I think everything but baseball. Like every like certainly it's older than the NFL. And I think it started slightly before the NBA.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I mean, basically, I don't think it was a question of frugality. I think it was just, yeah, basically, like I say, it's sort of a tradition. Like, it's sort of like, you and your friends have a yearly competition, and this person, like the person who comes out on top, gets to hold the thing that says, "I won this year." And like the next year, you get back together to like who gets to claim that like prize.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, all right. So, and for next topic, I think mini topic I want to go into is something. I think Meg came late last night, so I think it caused me to really shorten my topic. So I need to get the time back in this conversation. So I think last time we talked about startup investing, and then one thing we forgot actually to. I think one concept anything startup investing I forgot to mention is something called product market fit. Have you guys heard it before?
Not that exact phrase, but
okay,
guess what it means.
Yeah, it just basically means like how much your customer loves your product, right? The product market fit is something they talk about. You might hear if you do any kind of startup investing. So the best way to measure that startup, so that's one way to evaluate. So sometimes a lot of investors will ask you, oh, do you have product market fit, and how do you prove it, right? So stuff like that. So I think the best way to prove that you have product market fit is word of mouth. Like people talk about it, and then do people like ask other people to recommend your product to other people, basically? Because somehow organic growth, right? It's not buying like it's not like buying ads on like Facebook or something, right? So stuff like that. And then so as an example, I want to talk about Sriracha story. Do you guys know Sriracha, right?
I was the one who posted this link.
You sure?
Yeah, I posted this, didn't I?
No, what are you talking about?
Okay,
I posted it.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Why did you post it?
I saw it on I thought I saw it on Reddit. Did I not? Maybe I'm getting mixed up with something else.
No, why is this linked to Twitter then?
Yeah, people link to Twitter all the time on Reddit.
Okay, but
that's
yeah,
where the story is.
I posted it. Maybe you posted it too. I'm not sure.
Maybe we both just saw it independently and then got tripped up.
All right. So since you saw it, why don't you talk about it? Describe what's going on.
Okay. So this is like the Sriracha, the bottles with the green caps and the rooster on them, which I didn't really know anything about.
Yeah.
But basically, I was like, this is interesting, especially in our startup discussion. Because this guy, he's selling $150 million worth of them, and he like just started in his van and has literally spent zero on advertising and marketing. He doesn't, I think they said they didn't even get like a trademark.
Yeah.
Like nothing. He just started making it, and more people kept buying it. So he kept making more. He kept getting bigger and bigger buildings.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, and that I was going to say is we talked about how there's other things that could make a startup successful, you know, like having a good team and stuff. But, you know, this is one of those cases where like product really is first. Like if you have a good product, everything else doesn't really matter. Like, unless you just blow it in the other ways, you're going to be good. Or as Shu says, product market fit is high.
Yeah, exactly. Now he as you say, he spent like $0 on advertising, you know, so he just basically just grow it like through like word of mouth, right? So yeah. But I would say even the product, the founder David Tran, I think he's probably he's a very good hustler, I guess. He's really hardworking that way. I think he grow it as well. So I think his effort, I think one of the reasons maybe is successful, I think. Yeah.
So it's product and people.
Yeah. So I mean the backstory is the Sriracha story is actually nice. Sriracha is actually invented by a housewife in Thailand kind of thing. She created in the 1930s, I think, and then the recipe got passed around. And then when David Chan's family, when they escaped like communist Vietnam to come to the U.S. and landed in like Los Angeles, and in the 1978, he noticed that there's no like Sriracha in the U.S. There's not that, you know, maybe so that's why he said, oh. So he got an idea to create it and then start selling it in his business. Just like put those sauce in like baby food bottles, like those jars, and then just sell it out of his van. So that was in the 80s, and then he just grow it, and right now he just doesn't even. And then now he's $100 million revenue business, right? So kind of interesting. And I would say I think you mentioned a trademark. He did not trademark the name Sriracha, so that's why I was like, oh, that's why I see like so many places have like even Starbucks have like Sriracha sauce. I thought maybe they partner with like Sriracha, right? So maybe then now I can see they just use the name, so since it's not trademarked, so
yeah. Now I mean. I don't know necessarily how the law would work in that case. Could Starbucks try to like trademark it or like do so? Like, could a bigger company try to?
No, you cannot trademark. I don't think you can trademark it anymore if it became like very popular, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
so
it's already widely used. I mean, now it's almost like a type of sauce rather than like a brand of sauce, right? Like
right. Yeah. Well, I know. I'm sure there's arguments about how much is I guess gone into the zeitgeist or whatever. But but I think Taylor Swift was trying to trademark like "Shake It Off" or something when that song came out, and different phrases, and there was a big argument about like how much that had like. I guess like how much that was just like a phrase versus like her phrase. So
yeah,
that reminds me of the NFL trying to. So the Saints symbol is the fleur-de-lis. They were apparently the NFL tried to trademark the fleur-de-lis, and people are like, "This is like a hundreds of year old symbol used all over. Well, maybe not all over, but used for other stuff in Louisiana in particular, with the French influence." So. People were like, "Get out of here!" And I don't think they won that case. I should double check, I guess. But
I think if you have maybe have a design or uniqueness of that, like I know, like you can trademark color too, right? I think Clemson orange is trademark, right? Like you cannot have a Clemson orange, right? I don't think you can use that color. I don't know. Maybe that's is a rumor, but that's what I heard somewhere. Yeah. But either way, I think that David Tran, he actually doesn't care about trademark. He doesn't care about other people, like every company, other company like using like make their own Sriracha. He actually see it as a free advertising, because I think most people associate Sriracha with the Sriracha with the rooster, right? So yeah, with his sauce. So yeah. Anyway.
Right. Yeah, no,
Sounds
I
good.
mean, it's good. He did a good job.
Yeah.
So,
It's
All
like
right.
that.
So
It's that
yeah, go ahead.
classic immigrant American success story.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Anyway, enough
Hopefully,
of
I'm next, but you never know.
that. Get a good
You-
sauce going,
yeah,
Shu.
you guys cannot have immigrant stories. So
It's true.
all right. So I was saying last mini topic before we go into this may be too much, but we can just cut it short. If have you guys heard something called Fermi problem?
I feel like I've heard maybe.
FERMI, Fermi problems.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of it, but I can't remember what it is now.
Oh, okay. So Fermi problem basically just some kind of like just estimation problems. Like any problem that does like big envelope calculations. Like how much like the Empire State Building weight? Those type of questions, right? You just need to estimate quickly. Like how estimate very quickly, and Fermi they call these Fermi problems because it's a physicist called Enrico Fermi. He actually was a physicist, and then he actually he's the creator of like world's first nuclear reactor actually, and some people call him the architect of the nuclear age or the architect of the atomic bomb, and he also got a Nobel Prize back in 1938. So he worked on a lot of stuff and a smart guy. So he was known for like doing very fast like estimation, like calculations, like back on the envelope calculation that engineers and physicists do all the time. But just quick, I mean, it's very relevant to business as well because sometimes you want to estimate how much market you are. If you want to start business, you want to estimate how much customer revenue you're gonna get, right? So you can do this kind of back on the envelope calculation like very fast before you like do invest a lot of time to do a lot of like sophisticated calculations. So yeah. So I want to start with a pop quiz, I guess. If I had a question for you guys, since you guys are, smart guys, let's see how you guys do. So pop quiz for today. How many tuners are there in New York City? Go.
In New York City?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 50.
How did you do it? How did you come out with the number?
10 million people in New York City.
Okay.
How many you think play piano?
How many?
I mean, surely it's got to be at no more than 1%, right?
Okay.
Pianos are expensive. Think how rich you have to be. I mean, I guess there's a lot of rich people in New York, but how rich you have to be to get a piano like in your place, right? Because it's not just playing piano. We're talking about people who have to tune a physical piano.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm thinking 2 or 3 orders of magnitude drop there. And then, I mean, if you're a piano tuner, how many pianos can you tune? At least 2 a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen anyone tune a piano. I assume it's not an all-day process.
Yeah.
So even just on the order of 50 piano tuners, within a year should be able to tune thousands of pianos.
Okay.
And that would seem like the right amount for, the volume of New York City. That's my guess.
No. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
No, I mean, I was thinking between 50 and 100,000 pianos. And so like maybe 1,000 tuners.
Oh, there's between, 50,000 pianos. For a second, I thought you just meant 50 pianos. And I'm like, I think it's more than that.
No.
Yeah,
50,000 pianos.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Now, how did you come out with 1,000 tuners?
It was that more was like, so initially I was thinking similar to Matt, like how many people would actually have pianos in their homes. And I'm like 1%, maybe 0.1%.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, basically there's only going to be able to have enough tuners. Like, I mean, each tuner is probably going to have to do like at least, 50 to 100 a year. Like I don't know what career, like I don't know if that's a career or like that's a part-time thing but so I guess that's why I would guess probably at most 1,000.
That is a good point. I don't know if piano tuners are full-time or if there's more that just do it on like side hustles, but yeah. All right, what's the number, Shu? I assume you got it.
So this estimation is not about the right answer. It's about the process, how you arrive at it.
Yeah,
And
but I want to
think
know if I did better than Mike.
That's right.
I think so. You are in the low end, and then Mike is in the high end. So I think it's somewhere between there, like maybe 100, 200. But it's not really the answer that's really important. It's about the Fermi problem is how well. Like, I think like Google, like they used to do on these interviews for like, ask people these interview questions. I think McKinsey, like on this big consulting firm, they used to do it too. So basically, they want to know how you think and how you arrive at an answer and how you break it down, right? So so that's why you start with what's the population within the city and estimate how many people have with pianos, and how many pianos can a tuner tune per day, right? And then you arrive at an answer, right? So the process is the important thing. It's not really the answer that's right, but yeah. But yeah.
Okay,
that's good.
Okay, that sounds like participation award nonsense. Okay, where's our good old fashioned?
Well, estimation is just quick, dirty, right? Back on the envelope, you do it in like 5 minutes or something, right? So.
Well, if you ever take a college level physics thing, I mean, in an exam you might need more precise, but physicists themselves will be like, if you're within an order of magnitude, they're like, okay, you basically got it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's how physicists treat problems when they're just like sketching things out. So.
Yeah. So let's see. The next. So another question is very dear to my heart is like, how many cups of coffee does a Starbucks typically sells per day? Go.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How long what's Starbucks hours?
10, usually like 12 hours maybe. Usually 12 hours. Like 6 a.m. to, I would say let's try like 12 hours. I'll make it easy, 10 hours.
See, this is an ill-posed question because it depends on what Starbucks, right? I mean, if it's a Starbucks,
it's typical average, you can assume like it's not. You can make assumptions, right? Any kind of assumption may as long as you make as long as you make assumptions, so it doesn't really matter what's the right answer again.
All right,
just want to see how you guys approach it. How do you guys approaching it? I'm curious. All right, Mike, you see Matt go first. Now you go first.
I'll say the Starbucks in Tech Square sells, I don't know, between 500 and 1,000 cups of coffee a day.
500 cups to 1,000?
Yeah, sure.
Can you how'd you get that? What assumption are you making? How'd you get that number?
I guess coffee, like if I assume that coffee is sort of the #1 selling item at a Starbucks, like basically how much would they like figuring their rent is probably, well, I don't yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I mean, so any Starbucks essentially will need to sell like enough coffee. Like coffee is their probably money maker because they sell it up like way marked up compared to what it costs them to make it. So they need to sell enough to justify paying their rent.
Okay.
So, but I don't know. I guess generally, so I mean, I guess really what it boils down to is anytime I went in, there were I was usually roughly the 5th person in line. So I guess I would probably have been in there between 10 and 15 minutes.
Okay.
So if I was in there, say 10 minutes, I was the 5th person in line, then they would serve 30 people an hour. And basically, and I guess they're not necessarily going to have that every 24 hours. But say every, like for 15 hours, they're averaging like, so 12 hours, like 12 to 15 hours, they're open. So
let's make it easy, 10 hours.
So for 10 hours, they're open. and every 10 hours they're serving 50 people. Or like
you mean every hour 50?
Every hour 50.
Okay.
So, and most of those people are getting coffee, so roughly 500.
Okay. All right. That's pretty good. What about you, Matt?
I think he's underestimating the number of people Starbucks serves an hour heavily. So because I get what you're saying, like if you're standing in line, but I mean, I've been into Starbucks like 3 times in my life, so I have a lot of data points to think about this with. But they don't take that long, and a lot of people, some people order really quickly too. Like some people, it's like 5 or 10 seconds, right? They're like, here's my order. They could take the payment, they roll out, and like I don't think the line really matters. I think you could estimate the throughput of a Starbucks by how many orders they take, right? Or how long it takes to take an order. Because every time I've seen a Starbucks, they've pretty much always had a line. So it's almost continuous. I mean, I guess there's probably are downtimes during some periods of the day, but I would say more like every 30 seconds an order on average.
Okay.
Could be faster if it's well run at a high time, but so I would say more like on the order of 100 people an hour, could be a little higher. So, that's more like 1,000 plus or 1,200 people for 10 hours. There's going to be some people who aren't selling coffee, like you say. There's going to be some time where it's slower. So I would have said more like 1,000 cups.
1,000 cups. Okay. Yeah. You look at the throughput. You look at how many they can serve in 1 hour, right?
Well, I'm just thinking how many orders they take, because
that's
a bottleneck, right? Like if they take that many orders, they're selling that much.
Damn, you guys are smart. That's why you deserve doctors. Because in a way, do you see the difference between the first problem and the second problem? How'd you approach it?
So tuners, it was
the first one's kind of like top down in that you're going from like the big scope and saying like what percentages of those, you're just kind of like what percentage of the set you expect to be from a larger set.
Yeah.
And then this one, the second one's kind of the opposite, bottom up, like, okay, you have this much stuff happening at a time, like how much accumulation over a long time.
Exactly. I think, so the first problem, you start with the assumption of the population. How many people are in New York City? You start with the population and you go down, right? And this problem is, as you mentioned earlier, is a bottleneck problem. It's a throughput. You look at how fast people can go through, right? So when I first heard that problem, actually, is another version of this problem. Is like estimate how many bagels a Starbucks sell, right? When I first heard that, I actually started with the population. I was like, okay, how many people are around this area? Like how many people, and then that way, and that is actually a bad way to approach this type of problem. So anyway, so that's why you guys are smarter than me. That's what I'm saying. So it's a bottleneck problem. You estimate how many people can go through like a single Starbucks can handle in 1 hour, right? So
Okay.
Anyway, how many catch? Yeah, go ahead.
This I actually have. I looked it up because I couldn't resist. It's 1,500.
1,500.
Yeah.
So, all right, not bad.
Matt wins, but I specifically said Georgia Tech Starbucks. So
I mean, the Tech Starbucks probably, I don't know. I was gonna say more than average, but maybe not. Like Starbucks are crazy.
Yeah. But the Georgia Tech Starbucks in like the last few months.
Okay. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, that's good. All right. That's very good. And then anyway, that's the Fermi problem. Yeah, I'm interested because I'm trying to figure out how do I solve different kind of problems and then make decisions, stuff like that. And this is kind of relate to it. So
I also Googled though, and he's the guy who made the Fermi paradox, which is that paradox about why we haven't seen extraterrestrial life. I think we've talked about it on this. We've definitely talked about it before. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but like basically he estimates like with how many planets would be habitable for life and how many planets there are, like shouldn't we see some?
So what's the paradox?
It's that, right? It's the evidence indicates that a large percentage of the solar systems probably have an Earth-like planet, and there's so many around, and the universe is not super young, so they've been around for a while. So the question is, why hasn't there been like? It kind of takes some reasonable assumptions and then says there should be lots of life in the universe, right? But instead, we don't see any other life. So then the question is really about why don't we see this which of these assumptions is wrong. The assumption that life easily evolves, or the assumption that intelligence easily evolves, or something like that, right? It's extraterrestrial stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Listen to episode 22 and be bored.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Which might happen soon, since Richard Branson just get into space, right? And Bezos is going next. So
every billionaire is making a space thing. But anyway, that's okay.
All right. Let's get into now. Mac, you can take over. Get into the main topic.
Okay, yeah. So I wanted to talk about the future of transport, and I'm going to make a proposition, and then I'm going to present some of the recent changes in technology and society that I think all point towards this happening. And my proposition. Sorry.
Okay, before we go there, can you talk about what happened that make you interested in talking about this?
Yeah. I got
backstory.
An electric unicycle for fun / transport in New York City. So if you don't know what an electric unicycle is, think of like a bike wheel, and then they slapped a motor in the middle and a battery pack on the outside and put 2 pedals on the side, and then you just lean forward. So it's like a Segway kind of, but there's 1 wheel instead of 2, which makes it a lot more compact.
So it's a 1 wheel, and I know what's the at the beginning, what's the 2-wheel thing that got fired all the time?
Hoverboards?
Yeah, hoverboard, but just almost like 1 wheel hoverboard, right?
So 1 wheel in the middle, so you stand on the sides rather than between the wheels, and then it's much bigger wheel, so it's more like almost like a bicycle size wheel.
Yeah.
And there's some advantages to that, because basically, well, there's a lot of what I'm going to talk about is personal electric vehicles, and there's a lot of different ones, but I would argue that these are the best in terms of performance and portability. I think they're unmatched, just because they're so, like, it's so efficient and compact. Like, it's a large wheel, and then just the minimum amount of stuff you need around the wheel to actually make it go forward with a person, right? It's very minimalistic. So you can roll it onto a subway car. You could even put it into like overhead storage on like a plane. There's some small enough that you can put them in your backpack, although you got to get kind of like a specialty one for that.
Yeah. But I saw a lot of people like carrying it around, right? After that. Even in Georgia Tech, people just carrying it around into their lab, office, and stuff like that.
Yeah, but some of these, here's the thing, some of these, like, people talked, I'm going to just segue now into my first point, is that these personal electric vehicles, PEVs, have really gotten crazy in the last like 5 years. The development has exploded, and probably a lot of this started with like the Bird scooters, and we've seen a lot of and they've gone really crazy both in like the form factor, like the different ways these are constructed, and also just the raw performance. Because some of these, they're treated, sometimes they're talked about as a last mile solution. Like, oh, how do you go from like a public transit to where you want? Because you're not going to have a station every quarter mile, right? Like, how do you get to there? But some of these go over 45 miles per hour and have a range of well over 100 miles. Like, that's not really last mile transportation anymore. That's, starting to be car replacement. Now, they are not interstate capable, but if you're in like a city, that's starting to become. And the one I was talking about that you can fit into your backpack because it weighs 20 pounds and it's not that big, it has a range of almost 30 miles. It can go 20 miles an hour. It's not like something that's just like, oh, it's small, so you just put around like a little bit, right? Like, that still is pretty good. So my first point, sorry, I forgot the thesis. You distracted me. My thesis is that in cities, I actually think personal electrical vehicles might be the dominant form of transportation in the next like 20 years. Now, again, they're not going to, at least right now, they don't look like they'd be interstate capable. So I think the majority of, say, in the US, the majority of people would still need a car because they live outside of cities in suburban areas where the distances are just more stretched out. But for cities, I actually think PEVs might be the future. So number one is their performance, and the variety of form factors has exploded in the last 5 years. And that, form factor is nice because it lets people find something that fits with what they want. Probably bikes or e-bikes and scooters are probably going to be the most common, just because those are straightforward to ride and use.
So how many form factors are there now? Like you say exploded.
Yeah, well, okay, so you got like bikes and scooters, right? And then you have to also all have all these like mini bikes. Some of those are rented out, like different size small bikes. There's some tricycle ones. There's these electric unicycles. There's electric skateboards. There's obviously like classic hoverboards, segways. There's skates you can get that you just stand on, and each skate's a single wheel, but they're free. So they're like little things like this big, and one for each foot, and you just step on them, and then they act independently with the same balancing system where you lean forward to push forward. There's some guy in Japan who made, it looks like a tablet. It's like a 12-inch by 12-inch square, about 2 inches thick, and it has tiny wheels. So it's just like this little tablet, and this thing can easily go into your backpack. It's basically a laptop with 4 tiny wheels, and you just step on it, and then again, you just lean, and it just detects your weight and moves. Obviously, there's more classic things like mopeds and electric motorcycles. There's things that are basically electric motorcycles, but with one wheel. So like the electric unicycle I talk about, people usually stand on with pedals, but there's ones that have seats and handlebars, and it looks like a motorcycle with one wheel, just like kind of cut in half, and you balance on the top. And there's probably other silly things I haven't even seen. So there's a lot of different stuff.
You forgot to mention pogo stick.
I have yet to see a pogo stick. We'll see if that's the next big thing.
What do you mean? There's a company called Kangaroo that's doing pogo stick rental. Like e-scooter sharing, no scooters, and they do pogo sticks.
Oh, I forgot. There's another one though. You can buy. So think skates, right?
Yeah.
But electric. But wait, they're not your shoes. You kind of they like you step on them, and they sort of like they have like a latch thing to go, so it straps to your shoe. Yeah. And then it's got like a big wheel on the side that's electrified. So then like it's like a really weird electric skate that you attach to your shoes. So anyway, there's a lot of different form factors, which arguably provide different potential. And I mean, in Manhattan already, there's more e-bikes running around than regular bikes. There's probably more regular bicycles, but like every food delivery, DoorDash person or things like that, they're all using e-bikes. So if like you go count the number of bikes you see, you'll see a good bit more e-bikes than regular bikes. So anyway, so those have exploded. And like I said, the performance has just been, I mean, it's got to level off at some point, but like the speed and range of these have just kept increasing. So that's number one. Number two, is Amazon/Amazon-like services, because actually what kind of inspired me is I saw an article about an apartment complex in Canada, okay? And this apartment complex had no parking. They built 0 parking spots for it. Now, this is supposedly in a city that has transport nearby, so it's a walkable area. But as you might imagine, there's some debate amongst locals about the existence of a place with no parking, because they're concerned that their parking is going to be taken, and other people are like, oh, this is good. We need to like move away from car-centered lifestyles and stuff. But someone was like, one of the people was arguing, it's like, okay, even if you don't have a car for like to go to work, he's like, what happens when you need to go to the store and pick up a sound system? And I just thought, I'm like, who would buy a sound system in a store, right? Like get that shit Amazon to you. Like, of course. So with the prevalence of delivery everything, especially for heavy stuff, the need for people to have, a car for making trips to carry stuff is way down, right? So like just more than ever, most of your trips are just to transport yourself, not stuff. Everyone, like our generation gets everything Amazon or delivered through other companies, right? Not necessarily Amazon, and that's not bad because it's actually efficient, right? Is sometimes people say that's wasteful, but
you're talking about, I think you're talking about cities, right? Is the apartment in Canada, is it in the city or is it a suburban area?
It is in a city. Yeah.
That makes
sense. Or at least city enough. It might not be the biggest city. It might not. I didn't like start studying this Canadian, city. I mean, it might not look like Manhattan, but people pointed out that's like walkable distance to transit, stores, restaurants.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I think in New York City, even you have a car, you need to buy a parking spot anyway. So a lot of people just sell their cars when they move to New York City anyway. Yeah.
So anyway, so stuff like that, delivery preference. So that's number two. You have a lot less need to like transport stuff. Number three, I'm going to start going faster. Things like Uber, so ride shares, car shares and stuff has made it a lot easier and cheaper to get access to a car when you need it. if you need it occasionally, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not, obviously, if you need it frequently enough, someone's still going to buy their own car. That's why Suburbia is still going to have cars for the foreseeable future, because they're going to need it with such high frequency that they'll just get it. And once they have it, that's what they're going to use. But that's another factor. And then number 4, we do see cities are becoming more dense and less, we'll say more car hostile, or just trying to be more walkable and more friendly. There's a push both between the housing crisis and people just being like, we want more housing, and the environmental crisis. There's a lot more people who are pushing away from, making it so everyone needs to use a car. And I mean, the fact of the matter is cars take up a shit ton of space, right? Like in a city, if you look at the amount of space in your average city dedicated to roads and parking lots, it's a huge amount of space. So like if you recoup some of that, you can do a lot, build a lot more housing, more parks, more other stuff.
Yeah.
And from a city, we'll go number 5, from a city planning standpoint.
Wait, what's number 4? Did you skip number 4 already?
No, number 4 was what I was just talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But number 5 is city planning. Like, okay, so some people say there's an image of the carless future is like buses and bikes, right? Or public transit dominantly. And then people walk around from their public transit stations. And that's nice. Like, the city where you take a quick subway to a little area and then you can walk around that area easily. And then if you wanted to go to a different area, you take the train again. But that's really expensive and takes a lot of pre-planning to work well, right? Like the cities are already dominated by roads, but those roads can be easily repurposed for personal electrical vehicles much more easily than building large subway systems underneath them. And then I'll go one last thing is, compared to those things, public transit, personal electrical vehicles give you the luxury that cars do, in that you can just go to where you want when you want, right? Public transport, it has some conveniences, but it also has some downsides. Namely, like you have to go to a certain spot at a certain time, wait. They're usually time inefficient. So if you're driving in a car in rush hour traffic in a city, it's going to be worse. But like outside of like heavy traffic, cars are usually faster for most things, right? So all these factors, all these factors include, a lot of these factors just point towards getting away from cars. And personal electrical vehicles offer a fairly fast, convenient way to make a really large, like expanded radius of what you can get to quickly and easily without a car. So in cities that I think are going to continue to get more dense, I think you're going to start seeing that be a big thing. Suburbia is going to, hold off on cars for a while, but
yeah. So I guess your definition of the personal electric vehicle is not car vehicle, it's the smaller ones that you can carry around, like those electric scooters and then bikes
and things like that. Yeah. So things that are really, I mean, mostly.
What about scooter, like big scooter, those like mopeds, those are kind of big. Like
those
kind
of, I think those
borderline, right?
Yeah. Aren't there some areas in Asia where people already like drive mopeds everywhere? Like that's the
China's like that's everywhere.
I think you might start seeing a shift in America too, just from practicality, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think most people would want to per se on their own, but I think for people who live in the city, the incentives just might start making enough sense, right? Like it'd just be like, it doesn't make sense to own a car, especially if people keep, cities are generally liberal, right? Left-leaning, if they elect people who want to make pro-environmental moves and then they say we're going to like reduce car usage, right? Then they make it a bigger hassle to use cars, which pushes people away from them, the whole goal. But
yeah. So let's come to you're talking about electric environment. So recently I think there's all news about like batteries, right? Like they're talking about like batteries. Actually, when you make a lot of battery, you need to mine a lot of minerals, and these that can actually be bad for the environment too. So is electrical vehicles, even cars, are they really good for the environment? Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I do have thoughts. The answer is yes, they are.
They are good.
They are good. So sometimes people will look at. So let's look at from like a CO2 perspective for now.
Yeah.
People will talk about lifetime emissions of a vehicle, and that includes both the emissions to create it and the emissions to run it. So obviously a gas car obviously emits a lot more CO2 or CO2 equivalents while it's running, but they'll say, oh, but the electric car takes a lot to manufacture, and that's true. But on one hand, the gasoline car takes a lot to manufacture as well. And if you look at the lifetime, those electric cars are still much less than gas cars in terms of lifetime emissions, including their construction and operating costs. Now, the other thing is, I think there is an issue with, it's not an insurmountable issue, but it's something that people do need to address, which is batteries. And you talked about mining lithium. So batteries, like lithium batteries, are exploding in their use because it's cars, these personal electric vehicles, every cell phone and laptop, they're all using them, right? So there is a push. There's a growing amount of businesses trying to do lithium battery recycling, which can be done. We need more of them, so we need like more lithium battery recycling. But I'm not too worried about that because it seems like there's enough market incentives to do it, right? You can recover most of the metals in these batteries. In these lithium-ion batteries, you can get the majority back because metals are good for recycling. Essentially, once you extract them, they're just good to reuse. There's not like really degrading. Metals are elements. So you can get the majority of the lithium and the nickel and stuff back from these batteries. And that's a lot of money saved. That's a lot of energy and CO2 saved from having to mine it again. So I think as lithium batteries, as we continue to build these huge stockpiles of old lithium batteries, you're going to see more and more recycling companies. There's already new ones coming up, but you're going to see more and more get created and expand to sort of fulfill this need of, one, saving us from having too many old batteries just sitting around polluting, and two, to replenish our stocks of these valuable metals that we can use to make into new batteries.
Okay.
It's not something we could just ignore, right? Like it's not zero problems, but it's a very solvable problem. You just need enough people to invest in recycling. And if, like I said, I think that's probably just going to work out with the market on its own, because battery consumption looks like it's going to go past battery production. Like I don't know if we're actually going to be able to mine enough stuff to keep producing enough batteries as the demand for them keeps increasing, which is going to make it very profitable to try to recycle old batteries, because that's going to be an alternative source, a large alternative source of these, key metals and other ingredients.
Yeah, I think I just recently heard news story about Tesla's battery supplier has gone really high, exploded in valuation. Like how much the company's worth is, like 200 billion, something like that. I think it's quite a lot. So as you say, it's gonna be this. That means it's gonna attract a lot of investment, right, in this area. And then I think a lot of company are trying to do some different technology, right, instead of maybe using nanotechnology or other stuff to do batteries, improve the batteries, right? Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So going back to so that's good. So yeah, so going back to I guess personal electric vehicle. So what's the best form factor in your opinion?
I mean, objectively, it's probably the scooter.
The bird scooters, yeah.
It depends on what you want. Like, so a lot of this depends. If you want to go, if you want the most portable, it's going to be the electric unicycle. If you just want the most straightforward to use and balanced, it's probably the scooter. The bicycle might be the best for going farthest.
Yeah.
But that's going to be the biggest, have the most maintenance because it's the most complex. Yeah. Bicycles have the extra pedals and things like that.
Yeah.
You're not braking with the motor, which saves a little power. But I mean, when I had a bike, so I biked around Atlanta. So I would, it's easy for me to be like, oh, I live in New York, and now I say we don't need cars, right? But I biked around Atlanta for a while. I had a car, which I still used, but I used my bike to get to and from Georgia Tech where I worked.
Yeah.
And it was a surprising amount of maintenance cost if you're using a bicycle regularly. That said, if you are doing a lot of distance, it could very well be the best solution for you. But
what about in unicycle that you have right now? Now, how it's hard to learn it, right? For people that doesn't never skate before, and for example, me and Mike, I don't think we are very good at balancing those stuff like that. So can we buy those too?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't ever a skater or anything. It took me, I don't know, in about 2 hours, I could shakily do I could do everything, even if a little rough and shaky. I could go, I could turn, I could start and stop just in the open.
Yeah.
So I think almost everyone could be decent at it in a few hours of practice, which is, I mean, there's kind of two ways to look at it. You can be like, but anyone can step onto a scooter and get going in about 3 minutes, right? So compared to that, like, it's like whatever, but you know, that's not that much time to learn it. It's a little harder than a bicycle, right? Like people can't start on a bicycle and instantly learn. It's more difficult than a bicycle, but not like way harder than a bicycle. It just takes a little bit more dedicated practice. And then once you start getting the feel for it, right, it's really something your body learns. It's kind of interesting experience because your body just learns how to do it on its own without you really thinking about it. Like
So
I didn't.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like to counterbalance, the main thing you do is twist your hips left and right to like twist the device. But like I didn't see anything that told me to do that. I was thinking more like, oh, I probably need to like lean back and forth, right? And then, you know, once I did it for a little while, like it's like my body just did it. It just twisted if I started falling one way. And I'm like, oh, like afterwards, I'm like, that's how you're supposed to balance. Consciously, I now understand that, but my body did it first without me like thinking about it.
Interesting. So me and Mike, if we get it, how long do you think we can go on the street once we get it?
Probably would need minimum 3 hours to get like reasonably confident. Maybe you want to go more like 5 just to get like a little more polished and smooth before you step onto a road.
No, yeah,
but
like
Atlanta
among people.
Yeah, but Atlanta, I know as someone who biked around Atlanta, it has a lot of sidewalks that are usually empty because no one walks anywhere in Atlanta because it's a car-focused city. But that also means you can ride around things on the sidewalk pretty easily, conveniently. You know, I think there's some legalities about bikes belong in the road, but don't worry about that.
Yeah.
I'm not a legal advisor or a lawyer. I'm just saying there's a lot of areas in Atlanta that have empty sidewalks that are easy to ride on.
I guess so this point Shu just brought up is like, I've been thinking about, like, I see this being adopted by like potentially a large segment of the population, but I don't know, like in cities. And I could easily see like a larger segment than now, like frequently like adopting and frequently using like these types of vehicles,
but still having cars
as an alternative to cars for that certain segment. But I guess the two things that keep sticking in my head as to like why this maybe not be as widely as adopted as you may imply is like, one is the physicality, like just for like older BMI larger individuals like
yourself.
Yes.
Oh, shoo.
Yes. Oof. So I don't necessarily. So the physicality is one, and then two, where is the city? The weather, like climate, I could see playing a role. If you're in a city where it rains, you know, like a Seattle, or you're in New York in the winter, like there are some people who are going to layer up and take an electric bike into work when 4 layers, but I can't imagine that's going to be like a strong contingent of people.
The weather is a good point. So when it comes to physicality, it's not nothing, but like, I mean, some people who have difficulty physically doing much were the earliest adopters of personal electric vehicles, right? The little mobility carts they ride. I mean, that's like a half joke, but I don't know what's out there for that sort of demographic right now, but I could see sort of form factors that kind of split the difference, right? Like, oh, it tries to be capable both as like a mobility scooter for inside, but also you can like go on the sidewalk and go like at a reasonable clip for reasonable range. Now that you have the better technology, the better batteries in particular, to potentially supply it, right? So I think you can make form factor. They're not going to be on an electric unicycle bike balancing around, but I think you can make these devices in ways that are good for people who aren't physical. So if anything, that could expand their ability to kind of live in a walkable area, right? Because people who can't walk around well.
So maybe it's better for me and Mike actually to start with hoverboard, right?
Good. I mean, I don't know if hoverboard as the brand is a particularly good device.
Yeah.
Like it kind of seemed more like a toy versus transport. I guess it depends on what you want to do.
Oh, I see. So why don't we see hoverboard around anymore? Like I know a couple 3 years ago we were seeing it everywhere, right? Almost like exploding, but right now it's almost like I never seen it around anymore.
Outcompeted? I don't know. Like, but I mean, you're right. I don't see them a lot, but I see more than ever. Like ever since the first Bird scooters were put on the sidewalks, I've only seen an increasing amount of like electric vehicle stuff used. Whether it's a rental thing or something people own. Because I never saw people like ride their own scooters before there were rental scooters, right? But after rental scooters were around for a little bit, I started seeing people ride their own scooters as well. Once they obviously bought. So it seems like my guess is hoverboard must have just been outcompeted in terms of this, like people making things for actual, use to get
utility,
around.
yeah.
But going to Mike's other point, weather, yeah, you're right. So weather, I think, weather's one of the reasons that the reality is cars, if there's a road without too much traffic, a car is more convenient, right? Unless the distance is very small, like less than a half a mile. A car is probably going to be the most convenient. Which is why in cities, though, I think a lot of cities are going to be moving to make car usage more expensive and inconvenient for both. And I think that's actually the biggest push. So because there's two sides. There's kind of like the carrot and the stick. There's the carrot of like, oh, these are getting better and faster and whatever. And you can say you're doing something good for the environment, right? So that makes people feel good. At least some people. But then there's the stick of cities I think it's going to be increasingly difficult and expensive to use a car in a city, in most cities. Because we are seeing this trend. It's slow. I'll give it's slow, but you're seeing the trend. It's not just one apartment in Canada. There's cities, even in the US, where they'll taking like a street and saying like blocking off car access, right? And just making it like a walkable area, and other things like that. Or people take out lanes. They actually reduce the number of lanes, and that can actually improve traffic through a concept called induced demand, where basically the more lanes you have, the more people want to try to drive. So cities have actually found the reverse works. If they take away some lanes in areas they want to be more walkable, they decrease traffic through it just because people don't bother to try to drive through it. So I think we're slowly seeing the shift now as cities start moving away from trying to make everything about cars. And I think that's going to be probably the more big, the sort of the stick, the more big driver of that is going to be of people moving away from cars is things like that makes it unreasonable or unusable for them. And then, and that could be what gets people to be like, oh, it sucks I have to go in the rain today. But, it's like if you don't have a car, well, I was going to say, if you don't have, if you don't have parking super close to where you work anyway, like having a car doesn't help you that much in the rain, right?
Yeah.
So then the question is like, how often is that going to happen? Because even in Atlanta, sometimes you have to park a decent chunk away from where you're going to, right? And Atlanta's about as car dominant of a city as there is in the US. So
yeah. But raining, actually, if you have a nice small helmet on, actually, the rain actually doesn't really bother you. It's mostly your face, right? Because I remember when I used to ride motorcycles, I was surprised when it's raining and I had the helmet on. Actually, I don't feel the rain at all. Rain doesn't really bother me. It's right. So even though my body is kind of soaking wet, but it doesn't really doesn't bother me. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're geared up, I mean, it's kind of like the winter in general, right? If you're geared up well, it's not that big of a deal, but it is kind of a pain to have to bring all this stuff. Yeah. I know when I used to ride a bicycle, I mean, it was just a normal pedal bicycle. So the brakes were, pulled wires that pushed rubber pads against the rim, which meant as soon as it got raining, my brakes stopped working. So that made it difficult because then they were wet sliding on the metal. Personal electric vehicles, it depends, but a lot of them use electric braking, right? So it's actually the motor's braking, so that doesn't care about water. And most of them are fairly water resistant. Again, there's a lot of different brands and the different types. Most of them are at least somewhat water resistant. So you wouldn't want to submerge them in a pool, but they should be okay in the rain.
Gotcha. So do you think I should start a company that renting out unicycles, electric unicycles? Because
no, you don't want to rent something out that people can't ride the first time they use it. So that's a bad idea. Yeah. What you should do is you should start a battery recycling company.
All right. So then which personal EV company that I should invest in then?
Oh.
That's the whole point. Now we're talking about this, right? It's all about investing.
It's all about investing. There's a bunch. I think it's good for the market, but it's tough for investors because there's so many. I'm not sure who's going to break away, right?
Yeah.
Like, because even in the unicycle market, which I'm going to just say is a niche, like it's a niche group, right? That's not the dominant one. And it's never going to be the most used by a long shot. There's still like 4 big producers that share sales in the US.
I do like the fact that it made me taller when I ride it on the street, right? You see really above a lot of people. It's like floating in air.
Yeah.
Finally, 6 feet.
Finally. Finally, 7 feet for me. That's what I've always wanted, right? So, Mike, are you going to abandon your filthy car lifestyle and get an electric scooter?
I don't know. Like, I guess I'm not. Like, I agree it's a good way. Like, I've used the bird scooters and stuff, and they're fine. I guess, I don't know. Like, I just genuinely don't mind walking, like, a mile or two. So it's like, I sort of enjoy walking. So, like, I was never a person growing up that even really rode a bike at all. Yeah. So it's more just, I guess I don't necessarily see it because it's like if it's several miles, I will drive. And if it's like 2 or under, I'll probably just walk.
So that is interesting. So when I was young, my dad rode dirt bikes a lot when he was a young adult. That was like his thing. So as kids, we got a lot of motorized vehicles. So dirt bikes, 4-wheelers, there's a thing called GoPeds, which were scooters with gas engines on the back. I don't think anyone's ever heard of them besides for like me and my neighborhood friends, but they were a thing. So there's a lot of devices. So I guess I'm kind of used to that idea. Also, I hate walking. So if it's like more than half a mile, I'm starting to complain. I would not want to, like, if it's something 2 miles, like obviously I can do it. If it's like a special occasion, right? Like, oh, we're going someplace on the weekend, I could walk 2 miles, but I would not want to do that with regularity. So for me, and from my perspective, I'm like, oh, this opens up what's convenient for me to walk to or just travel, kind of go almost on foot from like half a mile to being like, oh, at more than half a mile, I'm kind of feeling lazy to like a few miles, right? Now I can go a few miles as quickly with less effort, and be like, boom. But that's a good point. Some people might be more tolerant to walking. I'm going to go ahead and say the average person's not. The average person's probably more like me and says walking more than half a mile, that seems way too far. No, we're talking about America still, this isn't China or Europe. So we're still talking about the US.
No, I mean, it's fair. I mean, I guess it's just people love their car. Like, I mean, the pandemic, right? Like we learned like, okay, most people can do their jobs from home. Like, and even still, like a lot of companies are moving to like, and this is, I guess, part of my thinking is like a lot of companies are moving full remote or at least hybrid, right?
Mm-hmm.
That should like reduced it is thus far it's not working, but like reduce traffic, right? If
it did for a while.
It did for a long time. But it seems to be back in force. So I guess you are right that people are sort of enraged by the traffic, but I guess will there I don't know, like, but people still show up every day in their cars. Like, will they actually like take that alternative? I mean, because in New York, it's like, or New York or Boston, you may pay like $1,000 for a space, right? I mean, people do it. So people do it rather than taking public transport. So I'm like, I guess is this, like I say, just because of like the physicality of it, the dealing with the weather, like, is it enough to like draw people away for like, I could see a subset of people, but like enough people away where it's like, oh, like essentially the cities are become like cars are like in the minority.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would say needs, I mean, the personal electric vehicle is probably the best for like, it's the in between, like the short distance, they call it micro mobility, right? The distance between like, oh, you need a car, but close enough that you don't really need a car, but far enough, that you don't want to walk, right? And that's when these vehicles are best for, right? So it's not gonna be replace car totally, right? And so you're talking about, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I guess New York City would be the place where it's like everything you would need is within that distance, like specifically like almost Manhattan. Because the other boroughs have their issues. But Like, but Manhattan, sure. Like, it's okay if like this thing can get you 3 miles more conveniently than a car, like then you could pretty much use it to replace your car, like in Manhattan. But even in Atlanta, like I'm thinking about there's plenty of things that I do that are more than 3 miles away, and I don't know that there's like a good replacement within that distance. Like I'm in
Yeah.
Atlanta.
You just need to move closer to Midtown.
Yeah. So no, I mean, laughing, but that's kind of one of my thoughts is like, again, I think Atlanta is probably one of the worst cities for this, but
Right.
Yeah.
even in Atlanta, if you lived in a few areas, Midtown, downtown, or Buckhead in particular, you know, you could get to everything you need within a few miles, within within 5 miles for sure, right? Like if you live in one of those areas reasonably close to the middle of it and you draw a circle 5 miles around you, you're going to get to everything you need. Now, I'm not saying you wouldn't want to go farther occasionally. So one thing I did say is I said it would be the primary form of mobility in cities, not the only, or that a lot of people would use it, wouldn't also have a car for on the side as well.
Sure.
But
so adding to your trend, you were talking about, the form factor exploding, people are using it more. I think recently that's one trend is going to push people to use it more is pandemic, right? I think like people don't want to use public transport anymore. I'm not sure about how crowded is the subway in New York City, Matt.
I
would use much.
I would say probably average. Like, I mean, there's been a few times I've gone where it's light. There's been some times where I've gone on it's heavy. It just kind of varies depending on like where you're going and
Gotcha.
and the time.
Yeah,
So,
I think the point is that I think people are probably not, since due to pandemic, if there's a shutdown again, something like that, people is not going to use public transportation as much as before. So one alternative is to use this kind of like micro mobility vehicles, right?
I think where it's really going to kind of come from though is people who not people who rely on public transit, but people who rely on cars, but are maybe in a situation where that doesn't actually make as much sense.
Gotcha.
Because like I said, cars are similar in that they're that personal transport, but if you're used to using public transit a lot and you have that available, I could see them just being like, why wouldn't I use public transport? I assume COVID's not going to push that many away, I guess.
Yeah. And one thing about that, I think there's a good point about like, I guess jump to another point is another trend that might push this is like, even though you say Atlanta is really like terrible for it right now, but in the future, you see like city like Atlanta population is going to grow, right? And then also is just going to get more dense. You are right now, you're already seeing there's so many construction everywhere in Atlanta, and population is growing, people are going to be more dense, then more people actually is going to use it just by the so increase of population density in the future, right?
Yeah, and not just more people total, but like a higher percentage, because it's when in Midtown of Atlanta, there's so many apartments going up that are like skyscrapers, right? Like really high stuff. Most of them are not building that many car parking spots, right? So it's going to become more and more infeasible to have a car nearby, more expensive and more difficult, which it's going to push.
In that sense, actually, Atlanta might be the perfect city for that because it's not very, very walkable, right? It's very not very walkable. So it might be a perfect place for these electric vehicles, right? Even though it gets very dense, but it's not very walkable, not New York City, right?
You're right, because in Manhattan, I think a lot of people are like, they already walk short distances, public transit, longer distances, so the need maybe isn't as good because you have a subway that brings you reasonably close to most stuff. But Atlanta is like, nah, you have the MARTA. It goes up and down and left and right on, like that's it.
Yeah.
So, no, that's actually an interesting point.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think a lot of this is going to be economics just pushing people initially. And then I think a lot of people, once they make the jump, will be like, oh, that's not so bad. But it's kind of like the first time you use MARTA, right? Like if you've never done it before, there's like this mental block because you're like, you don't really know what it's going to be like. You don't really know how to do it. It's kind of like an annoying amount of effort. So you say, oh, why don't I just drive to the airport? Because I don't want to figure that out. But once you've like gone and used it, you're like, oh, wait, actually, that's pretty convenient to just, MARTA in rather than driving all the way down to the Atlanta airport.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just normal right? You kind of do what you've already are accustomed to, which is driving versus trying something new. So I think so the question is there going to be enough incentives and costs to push people to try something new and abandon their cars? We'll see. It's going to be like 20 years. I'm not saying it's happening in the next 5 or anything, but we'll see.
The only other thing I can think to sort of mention is like the issue of like, I mean, cars afford some level of like privacy and safety. Like with these vehicles potentially, like, I guess a con could potentially be like, you know, a lack of that privacy or like a lack of safety.
Yeah. No, that's a potential, I guess. I mean, I guess my first thought is they're not going to be less safe or less private than walking, right? But there are some people who might not like want to walk somewhere at a certain time of night, right?
Right.
I think, I mean, from what I've seen, generally it's not like, usually if you're on a vehicle in like even if you're on like a bike in a road, I don't think people stop bikers much, right? To like hassle them, right? They usually just blow past. But you know, it is a thing.
Right. It could be, I mean, it might increase your safety because if something try to rob you, you can just hop on it and run away. You can go really fast.
Well, it's probably still harder to rob someone in a car, but
yeah,
true. Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't know. So, but I like I say, I think a lot of people will be using them. It's just a question of how much of the market they take, like, you know, become the primary source of traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what cities do, right? Like, like I could see some cities, like I wouldn't be shocked if Portland started eroding more of their car lanes for like bike/personal transport lanes, basically adopt bike infrastructure, but in a larger, you know, more generalized. But, you know, and then but is every city going to do that? No. Like, I don't think Houston's going to do that.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of city right now are very more like very regulating these like scooter sharing company like Bird, but they have like designated area you can park them and stuff like that, which I think is pretty good. And I think that's why a lot of company actually like starting working on autonomous, like not like coming to you, like you order a scooter on your app, you actually like coming drive the scooter to you itself. Actually, I think is a lot of companies starting with teleoperation because someone else is like teleoperating it, controlling the scooter and driving the scooter to you, and then you just hop on. Actually, I think that's one company in Atlanta is working on it right now.
That'd be cool.
So, that'd be cool. Good. All right. So I was saying there was a generally very good topic conversation, a personal electric. I think you frame it as the future of transport, right?
The future of, like I said, I'm gonna suggest somewhat, you know, without true evidence, or, you know, I could obviously be wrong, but transport in cities is what I'm gonna say.
I'll say one criticism I have for you is you did not talk about VTOL.
Vertical takeoff and landing?
Yeah, and the future of transport.
That's not part of the future of transport.
Why not?
Too energy expensive.
Really?
Fine. Especially so you're talking about helicopters, quadrotors or something for like personal use?
Not for personal, but it could be like future of taxi, right? Could be just a VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing, right?
Look, people have been talking about flying cars since people had cars, okay? That's been a thing, but it's bad because it's extremely energy inefficient. So planes kind of work because wings are actually kind of efficient for lifting you off the ground if you have a lot of forward velocity. But something that just generates enough thrust straight up to keep you from, you know, falling due to gravity is extremely energy expensive, right? Like that's a lot of energy. So that's the opposite of efficient, and it's not a realistic thing. Like it's just,
Interesting. Because there's one company as it going Joby Aviation. I think they are going like on a public market using SPAC pretty soon. So you don't think that's a good investment then?
I mean, look, some rich people take helicopters, right?
Yeah.
And they'll take a helicopter to like another nearby city or a different part of the city. So it's not that there's zero market for people who want to fly super fast for short distance, but it's going to be a small market because I think that's going to be very expensive. So I think you're basically dealing with rich people fast transport.
I see. So your main criticism is not energy efficient.
Yeah,
Okay.
for anything that's vertical takeoff and landing, flying stuff is just very energy expensive, not efficient. And it's going to be, obviously, you're flying, means you have a lot more safety standards, right? For good reasons, right? If you're flying over a city, you can't have this risk of like turning off and dropping, because it threatens a lot more people than just the riders. So there's just a lot more costs, and it's not something that can be personal, right? Because you can't just have any Yahoo jump in and fly themselves over the city. So again, there's a lot of things that's going to make that way more expensive versus a car or a bicycle that you.
So what's your thought on jetpacks, man?
They're cool looking. They're not.
It's personal EV, right? PEV.
They're not an EV. Jetpacks don't use batteries. They use jet fuel. The ones I've seen, or sometimes they use, what is it? Hydrogen peroxide. I think I've seen some that use like that, and they push it through a filter that makes it do like a chemical transformation. Anyway, they use some sort of chemical fuel, not batteries. So it doesn't count.
So you don't think that is going to be the future of transport?
No, not in the foreseeable horizon.
What if someone make an electric version?
Like, I mean, what's an electric jetpack? It's just a helicopter that you strap on your back, right?
True, yeah.
The answer is still, I don't think so.
Gotcha. All right. That's good.
Sorry. I don't know.
You're
all right. That's good.
Extremes.
Two extremes?
No, your ICD's ruining your dreams.
I'm always over here shooting down things, and some of those are probably actually will be successful. So you can't trust me, Shu. But I'm a skeptic. Good. You know that. I'm like, this idea is not going to work.
As what I said earlier before we start, skepticism got to be right, but optimists got to be rich.
Yeah, but which would you rather be? Obviously, right. Come on.
Optimists. Yeah, which one would you rather be right or be rich? My question for you.
Right. I'm going to be right.
All right. What about you, Mike?
No, I'll be rich. I'd rather be lucky, not good.
That's good. I think that's a good place to end, actually.
All right. Well.
Do you have any conclusion thoughts on this?
I've rambled a lot. I've given my reasons. I think there are a lot of things that push towards it. Mike is right in that there's also some reasons that would probably push people to not abandon their cars. And we'll just have to see what happens in the future.
Yeah.
All right. Profound. All right.
Profound.
I'm going to take us offline. My hair is driving me crazy.
What? Why? Why do you care about your hair?
Because I look ridiculous. So.
What do you? Why do you actually look at yourself anyway? I turn my self view off. I'm not even looking at myself.
That's probably wise. So, all right. Next week, I'm turning my self view off, and maybe
next week you should talk about why you like to look at yourself.
Talk about vanity.
Next week, I'm turning y'all off and just maximizing my own image.
That's right. No, I was thinking next week I might talk about healing.
Healing?
Yes.
In what sense?
You'll tune in next week.
Oh no!
All right, now
No. I think it might be like physical healing. Like,
I'm gonna be honest. Healing makes me think of people holding crystals above you rather than instead of using a doctor.
Well, I'll see what research I can find. It may be reduced to that, but I think I'm more interested in like how healing changes as we age and why.
Okay.
So. Okay,
you mean like automatically instead of like you go to see a doctor, it's like how fast we heal. It's like Warfarin, right? I always want to be like Warfarin where you can just heal yourself really fast. Like X-Men.
That's right. Yeah.
How can we do that?
I find out next week. All right. So I'm gonna take us offline. All right.
Yeah. All right.